Hey, this is Melissa Wires. I'm the Executive Director here at Every Action, and today we're going to talk about save time and raise more money with fundraising automation. So thank you for joining us. I think we're going to jump right in because we've got a full list of things to cover. Few reminders as we get started. Please make sure you're in listen only mode. We will be taking questions, but we're going to do them through the chat box that hopefully you see on your screen. Just at any point in the webinar, feel free to enter your question in there. You don't have to wait till the end, and we will answer them as we get to them. Also, don't forget to join the conversation on Twitter. The hashtag you want to use is hashtag fundraising automation. All right, so here's our agenda today. First and foremost, why should you care about automation? Which is another way of saying, what can automation do for me? Then we're going to specifically talk about what is it. Lots of people think automation is things that it sometimes isn't and sometimes is, so we're going to clear that up. And then most importantly, and where we're really going to spend most of our time today, how can you use it in your program? So these are the questions I get a lot when I talk about automation, particularly from fundraisers. Do I really want to do this? Will a robot do my job? Is it like getting an assistant? Will my donors like it? Will they give me more money? And here's your answers. Yes, you really, really do want to do this. This will be a great time saver for you. No, at least at this point, they keep talking about the future, but there are no fundraising robots ready to go at this point. No self-driving fundraising programs. Unfortunately, it is not like getting an assistant. If you can get the powers that be at your organization to get you an assistant, get one. But automation will not do that for you. Will your donors like it? Yes, they will. Will they give you more money? Yes, 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 yes. This is the reason really to do automation. So a couple of things, really the holy grail, if you will, of fundraising is right message, right person, right time. And if only that was easier to do than it is. And really what automation does is it helps you get a step closer to that right message, right person, right time. And we'll kind of talk about how to do that today. The other thing, for as long as I've been in fundraising, which frankly is a long, long time, we've always had this analogy that, there's this ladder of engagement, and at some level, the way it's supposed to work is somehow you get somebody's contact information, and then if you are an amazing fundraiser, when they die, they leave you their house and everything else. And in between, you get more and more money from them. And I'm not sure that that was ever a really great analogy for fundraisers, but it's definitely one that's broken today. So what I really talk about is we've moved from the ladder of engagement to the jungle gym of engagement. People get on, people get off. Not everybody wants to go to the top of the jungle gym. And really what you have is new peaks and new paths. And that's really where automation can help you meet those needs. It is not a one-size-fits-all anymore. So with that, where do we want to start today? I think where we will jump in is frankly at the beginning. So just because some people like definitions, this is my definition of fundraising automation. That basically is a tactic that allows you to get the right message to the right supporter at the right time with the fundraiser as the brain of the operation rather than the hands of the operation. So you're going to think about what's the messaging, what's the timing and whatnot that's going to make that work for your supporters, but you're going to get an assistant to kind of get the details out for you. A couple of other things, really what we see when people automate some of their fundraising programs, first and foremost, they get more completed gifts. That's one of the ways you raise more money. Oftentimes they get higher average gifts, another way to raise more money. Overall, year over year, better retention when you're automating these programs. And frankly, maybe the big win for a lot of fundraisers, more time for you to do other things to raise money in other ways. And believe it or not, we are living in the future, whether we want to or not. So here's a little bit what the future might look like. So in terms of automation, there's a couple of ways to think about this. There is a single channel automation or a multi-channel automation. The most common one, and I'm sure to some degree the one that you're all using, is email. And some of what we'll show today can all be done by email, and hopefully by this point in time everybody has a system that makes it easy for you to automate your email. And then you see kind of multi-channel. I think the one that is more and more common is an automation between email and direct mail. There are also folks that use automations between email and telemarketing. This is particularly popular with sustainer acquisition. And then some folks go kind of all in and they're doing email, direct mail, and Facebook in an automated fashion. But really for a lot of people, email is still core. It is usually kind of the central point of the multi-touch communication, sort of almost no matter what other channels you're using, email is right there in the middle. And it is often still, even though everybody's doing more social, email is still kind of the hub for most digital communication and frankly, digital fundraising programs. So that's where we're gonna start, is talking about email. So the first part is to think about, and maybe just go back for a second, think about what you want your communication series to look like, first of all. So I think we go to the next one. That's all right. Yeah, so a lot of people like these diagrams. You don't have to do one to do an automation, but just because a lot of people will think of it this way, you know, kind of think of what your core goal is. And for fundraisers, it's usually getting a gift, but there are other goals out there. And then kind of what are your different audiences and what are your different messaging? And we're going to start, there's a couple of levels of this, and level one is really straightforward, and I bet most of you are doing this, but it'll give you a point to start, and then we'll go to level two. All right, so I think almost everybody has something that they call a welcome series for new non-donors. These are the people that come to your site and give you their email for the first time. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this, but a popular way is a series something like this. This is 5 emails. This is, your first one is thank you for signing up. Second one, welcome to our digital community. Third one is usually some sort of engagement. Here we have take a survey. Fourth one is maybe we have an event coming up, would you like to join us? And then usually the fifth one is would you please give us money for the great work that we are doing? And really what you should be able to do here, and we're in a little bit going to look at a specific example of what Audubon did to create this, but really what this should be is take your best of and start engaging with people and track what they respond to and what they don't. Then kind of a second version of this, and again, you should have 2 different welcome series at minimum, one for new non-donors and then a second one for donors, particularly new donors. And again, you can do the same number of messaging, but you mix it up a little bit. You definitely want your first email to be thank you for your support, thank you, thank you, thank you. You can never say thank you enough. Second one is often engagement, take a survey. One of our clients, Union of Concerned Scientists, I think used surveys brilliantly. As you would guess from their name, most of their supporters are scientists or the people who love them. And so they really collect a lot of information about exactly what kind of science the person is interested in. Do they have a PhD? If they do, where did they do their PhD? Are they at a university now? Are they tenure track? Do they speak publicly? What would they like to do? They collect all this information and then they use it for segmentation, which makes everything work even better for them. The next thing you probably want to do, and you want to get in there pretty early, is an email that really talks about the impact of their support. Here, if you have a nice video, that's a great place to use the video. But if nothing else, you know, tell a story of somebody that's been helped. That kind of, you know, if you look at all the surveys, the thing that comes back again and again and again that donors want to get again and again and again is information about the impact of their contribution. So that's always a winner. You might, again, you know, if you are an events kind of organization and it works well for you, invite your donors to events as well. And then by about the 5th email, you should think of an upgrade. For a lot of folks, becoming a sustainer is a really popular upgrade, but there's other things that you could ask people to do. Is this a good prospect for a mid-level program? Do you have a volunteer program? But, you know, ask them to more deeply engage. The advantage of both of these, and this is why I call this level 1, is that you set these up in most cases and you run them probably for a year without having to change them much. This is the part where automation saves you time. First time out, do some testing, be careful of your results, look at what's working, come back and refine. But once you get something that is meeting the standards you want to meet, unless something really changes with your work or in the world, which does happen more these days, but even yet, this is the kind of series that is gonna be good for you for quite a while, and that's kind of your goal with some of this. The other thing you want to really think about besides messaging is how you can better personalize what you're sending to donors. And this is where you want to think a little segmentation, and maybe you have a couple of different welcome series. One that's really popular for folks is acquisition topic. You know, maybe you had one group of people that came in on acquisition around Save the Polar Bears, and another one that came in on, you know, stop using straws. And maybe you want to slightly vary that messaging that they're going to get in the welcome series. This is really with automation how you could do this. I think you can imagine, you know, you've got to write the messaging once, but even if you had 2 or 3 or 4 different acquisition topics, you can always refer back to what they came in on, and that's almost always going to keep them more engaged as opposed to going to a different topic or several topics. Another way to think of that too is maybe not by topics, but by source. Maybe you had some folks come in on a Care2 petition, a Facebook ad, some that just showed up to your website and you're not really sure where they came from, or from someplace else on social media. Again, testing has showed if you refer back to how they first came to you, which might be literally referring, you know, you were so great to sign our petition on stop using straws. Here's 5 more things that we want to accomplish this year and we need you to do it. You came in on our Facebook ad about polar bears. Let us tell you more about the work with our polar bears. Again, you can go back and within that same series that I just showed you, keep that sequence of messaging, but just put some references back into that source that they came from. And then and I'll show you how to do this in a little bit, but part of your segmentation is get my people who came in from Care2 into the Care2 version of the welcome series. Just that little bit extra of personalizing usually pays off big in terms of both retention and additional gifts. Okay, so probably most everybody's doing level 1 to some degree or another. Now we're going to go to level 2, and I hope most of you are already doing this, but I do find as I talk to clients a lot aren't yet. So I think the way to think about it for any welcome series, and really for any series of messages, whether it's to your new non-donors or anything else, there's kind of 3 ways to think about this. And what most people are doing is the first one, which is just a single blast email. It's not automated, you know, everybody who's eligible on your list for the messaging, you put them all into one email, and usually it's just referencing a single event. You may have 2 or 3 single blast emails about a single activity, you know, whether this is our, you know, annual year-end campaign or it really is an event that you're getting ready for. But still, you're really thinking one by one. The second one, which this has become a lot more common, is people do drip campaigns. So the difference between a single blast and a drip campaign is a couple of things. One of which it is automated, meaning there are triggers that get people in and triggers that get people out, but it's still a bit of a passive path. It is pre-scheduled. It's the order is predefined. Oftentimes, not always is a general education, but it is pretty general because it's not as carefully segmented and thought about. And really where you want to go with automation is the nurture campaigns. So there, it's also automated, but you do have an active path. This is active path, meaning you're going back, and what gets people into that particular series of communications is something that they've done. So for instance, they've signed a Care2 petition. So now they're gonna get the welcome series for folks that came in on the Care2 petition. Again, it's triggered by engagement. In that example, they signed the Care2 petition. That's what got them into that. Usually with nurture, your goal is a conversion. Sometimes it's a conversion for a first gift, but it might be for a second gift. It could be for renewals. It could be for upgrade, but your goal is not just to educate them about something or talk to them about what you do. You want them to take some action when you're doing a nurture campaign. Um, and then kind of the last thing, and this might be the biggest thing, is your content's based on interests and needs, which really means your supporter took an action that makes you think now they'll be interested in this communication, as opposed to kind of the old way of doing this is, it's November, it's time for us to start the year-end campaign. That's how we always do it. Everybody's gonna get it. All right, so as you kind of think of these nurture campaigns and just automation in general, one of the campaigns I think everyone should automate is your renewals. It might be the best time saver you can do. So basically the way to think about this with your renewals is you have however many notices you have in your renewal series. Some people do 3, some people do 6, some people do 9. But just to give you an example of what an automated renewal series might look like. Again, always start your renewals with a thank you. Your donors may not see this as the beginning of their renewal series, but we've tested this. It's a great way to kick off renewals by saying thank you, and here's what you've made possible with your recent gift in the past year. Then the second one is really trying to add a little bit of urgency. Don't wait, renew now. This is usually sent out still before your actual anniversary date. The third one, your membership is expiring. This is that you got to do this now. This usually is pretty close to the actual, and for most people, renewals are annual. So this would be your annual renewal. The fourth one, of course, is the other side of that. Your membership is expired. We really, really need you to do this now. Then you get a little bit more urgent there. Don't go. We miss you. I'm sure you guys have all seen this. Next one, urgent, last chance to renew. Although for a lot of people it's never really a last chance, but that does in testing seem to work. And then kind of for this series, the last one is we want you back, which is kind of the beginning of a lapsed recapture. The advantage with renewals, again, for most folks, is you set this series of communications up once per year, and it takes you through all your renewals for 12 months. And maybe you need to update copy slightly over the course of the year, just depending on what happens. But even that is pretty minimal to do. You've got your queries all set up, and as long as you make them dynamic, and you get your messaging set up, and I'll show you a little bit how to do that in just a minute. This all runs for you all year, and you really don't have to do anything except see your reports. So, and in different CRMs, this is a little bit different. This is how we do it in every action. This is the beginning of a renewal series. And basically what you do is create an email for each one of your notices. What I have here is just a 3-notice email renewal series. And I like to be really straightforward, so I literally called it Renewal Notice 1, Renewal Notice 2, Renewal Notice 3. There's no confusion then. And then basically you set up those 3 emails, and then you connect them. You put in there how much of a delay you want between each email. So for our first one, between Renewal Notice 1 and 2, we have 5 days. Between 2 and 3, we have 14 days. You can test that. You can do that to whatever really works in your system in terms of doing that. And then, so it's super easy to get set up. If you can set up an email, you can do a series, an automated series with no problem. And then really what to think about, and this is how you start your queries, and this is also why I think renewals are so easy to automate. For every automated series, you need a trigger that gets people into the series and a trigger to get them out of the series. For renewals, it's usually some combination of time. It has been 9 months since you've last made a gift, and we start our renewal series 90 days before your anniversary, so it's time. And for a lot of people, amount of a last gift. If you have a minimum gift, if you have a membership program where you've got to give at least $50 to be a member, or just out of tradition, you consider a full membership or a full donor to be a $25 donor, you usually include that amount in it. For some people who have somewhat complex renewal programs, sometimes only gifts to a renewal are considered as renewed, as opposed to if you give to an appeal or something like that. So in that case, you would also want to pull in source codes. These are your triggers. Literally, when you set up your query, This is what you do, is give me all the people who are eligible in this amount of time to come in, and of those people, give me everybody whose last gift amount was whatever you want that to be. Include that. And then of course, if you do have particular source codes, then you say, out of those people, give me everybody who has given to one of those source codes. And really what you want to remember here in the every action system is you want to do a dynamic query. And so by setting it up that way, again, every month as people hit that time period, it's now 9 months since they've given. So like right now, for anybody who gave in December, you're probably going to start their renewals in October, because that's going to be 90 days back for most of them. And it's automatically going to give you those people. And when they hit that time point, 90 days, their first renewal email is going to go out, and you don't have to do anything. Nothing. And then in terms of trigger out, for fundraisers, almost always the trigger out is to give a gift of above a certain amount. There are other triggers that you can think of. For some people, it's, we're gonna do this until they stop clicking or stop opening. But for most fundraisers, it's just a real straightforward, give me a renewal gift, and you drop out of the series, whether that's notice 1 or notice 2 or notice 7. And until you give me a gift, I'm gonna continue to send you the series. So that's kind of renewals. The other program that I think almost everybody should set up is what I call the lapsed recapture program. Again, the nice part about this is typically what gets people into this is time since their last gift. And that's different for different people. I know some people that start lapsed recapture actually at 90 days if they haven't heard from somebody. Traditionally, people would wait a year or even 18 months. But you can, if you don't have a good sense of where that fits for your organization, I'd encourage you to test into that. But again, the great thing about this is typically you set up this series once a year. Maybe you have to make small changes in copy, but usually not even big ones. And then again, you set up that dynamic query, and this will run for you all the time without you doing anything. There's many ways you can do this. This is one that some of our clients have tested and has worked well for them, so I'll just walk you through it. But the first email is great things are happening, and sort of what's implied in that is you are missing these great things. The next one there is come back. Some people are very straightforward with this and say, come back, we miss you. The third one, and I think this is really an important one in a recapture series, here's why we need you. It's not just we need people, we need donors, but we actually need you, Susan, because here's what you have made possible. Fourth one, this is an old technique, but still good. Tell us why you left. Some people actually do kind of a 3-question survey, and it turns out a lot of people, rather than really tell you why they left, they'd rather just give you a gift. So that one works out pretty well. Email 5, and I think particularly in the last year and a half or so, this one has worked really well. We really need you now. You've supported us in the past, you've been great. We haven't heard from you recently, but here's why we need you now, because this terrible thing is happening and we're on the front lines fighting it. The last one that works for a lot of people, not for all, but discounted membership. Normally, our top membership is $75, but right now if you come back, we'll do it for $65. For some folks that works too. The main thing is you want your lapsed recapture messaging to be really different from your renewal messaging, because presumably a lot of these people just went through your renewal series and that didn't bring them back. So you want to try some different things and different messaging in the lapsed recapture. Another one that I think just about everybody should set up, if you have sustainers, and if you don't have sustainers, you should start a sustainer program, but is really sustainer retention. And so what this really is if a credit card fails. The first thing you really want to do with sustainers is you want to have credit card updater, which is available to all Every Action clients. And with credit card updater, automatically at the processor, every time a credit card either gets stolen or lost or Target has to reissue everything, it will automatically update that card number without the owner of that card or you, the nonprofit, having to do anything. So you really want that to be your first line of defense. But for those that don't hit credit card updater, here's kind of the next one. And again, the beauty of this is you set this up, it's all automated. You set up the dynamic query of give me everybody whose credit card just failed last time I tried to run it. And you set up a communication series, something like this. The first one, a very nice, so sorry, but your credit card didn't go through. Would you consider updating it? This is the perfect place if you have what we call a donor self-service portal or another site where your donors can just go right online and update their credit cards themselves. That's easiest. Second to that is usually a 1-800 number that people can call. Number 2 is usually just a reminder of the first, just in case you missed it the first time, want to let you know your credit card has failed. Email 3 is, last chance for you to make a difference this month. Don't wait, please update your credit card now. And that's usually pretty, and some people will go further to 4 or 5 notices. What a lot of people do is do a 3 email series, and then they actually turn it over to a telemarketing firm because those sustainers are so valuable that they bring them back. The other thing I would ask you to consider doing if you aren't is for deeper lapsed sustainers. So whether it's because their credit card actually is no longer valid, or they knew their credit card was no longer valid and they were just going to stop giving to you. Folks have used this email series, which again, it's set it up one time, whatever you get, you get. It doesn't take that much time, and it's brought sustainers back. So one of the things that seems to be a big deal is the anniversary of them becoming a donor and or a sustainer. And if you can refer back to that, a year ago or 2 years ago, these are probably deep lapse, 2 years ago, you were so important in signing our Care 2 petition to stop flooding the seas with straws. We so appreciated your support there. Let me tell you what we've done in that amount of time, and let me convince you to come back to us. Email 2 is usually even more of a detailed impact update. So not only have we made progress in cleaning up the seas by getting rid of straws, we've also picked up other trash and educated people and done all these other things. The third one, some people do, and for those that it works really well. Some people don't do premiums and they don't do it. But if there was ever a time to try a premium, that seems to be a good place to stick it in. The other one, and a lot of people are just starting these mid-level programs. So mid-level programs are typically, and every organization kind of defines the giving level a little bit different, but they're typically people that give somewhere between about $200 and $1,000. Some start at $500. I've seen some that go up to $5,000, but they're basically people that for your organization don't quite make it into the totally high-touch major gift program, but they give you more money than your average direct response donor does, so you want to treat them special. So first thing is you want to have an upgrade into a mid-level program. Some people name their mid-level programs. They have a special name. Some people actually don't, but what you really want to do is more personally communicate with people, probably communicate with them more often. You are asking them for higher donations. So that's kind of your first step. But what I really think works really easy for automation is not only you can do the invite, but particularly to do that renewal every year. So, again, if you are doing your renewals 90 days from original gift, if I give you $500 in December last year, you're probably going to start my renewal in October. Here's a sample of what a couple of clients have tried that has worked really well. Not so different from what you've seen with other renewals, but start out with a thank you. Talk about the impact of their gift. Here you really want to emphasize the impact as specifically as you can, because these people are generally giving you bigger gifts, so they want to see that even more is accomplished. You know, don't wait. Renew now. You want to give them that higher dollar ask when they're renewing. Same thing, your membership is expiring. Again, if they're already in your mid-level program, you want to make sure that ask is appropriate and different from your regular renewals. If they seem like a prospect from your regular renewal program, you can cross over and do the mid-level asks. The rest of this is, you know, similar to what you see with the regular mid-level, the regular renewal program. But what changes it with the mid-level is you want to use all the personalization that you can. Maybe with your regular, you know, $50 donors, you're not going to necessarily go back and talk about what they came in on originally or just the programs that they're interested in. But what we found with testing at the mid-level, it really makes sense to do that. You know, take the time to notice what they did come in on and whether it was a petition or it was a gift straight out. And then secondly, to really be cognizant of if they have what they gave to initially and have they given again, and do that in your segmentation. So this, you know, all the things we talked about before in terms of setting up your query to get into renewals, you would do that, but then you would further segment people by either topic or way they came in. Either, you know, these are our polar bear people versus our straw people, or these are our Care To people versus our Facebook people. And I've seen people, you know, that have brought folks in from Facebook. They actually take the image from that original ad, put it back into the renewal, and it almost always bumps up their conversion rate, you know, reminding people whatever they liked the first time to give you money, they tend to like it again. So a couple of things, you know, again, so those are examples that I think just about everybody can automate those programs, and they're not that hard to do, and you will have more money. But, you know, you get to the point with other programs and it's like, how can you tell what program is a good one for a possible automation versus what is not likely to work as well for you? And there's kind of what we found in working with clients, there's kind of two things to look at. The first one, probably no surprise, look at their engagement. What are they opening and what are they clicking? You know, and again, this is a great one. If you've been running a welcome series or something else for a long time and you got 6 messages, which of those 6 messages is your real winner? And maybe you do more of that particular tactic style or just messaging versus these others we don't do so well. The other thing is pull people out of your regular communications when they show you that they're probably not working. So at minimum, if it's been 12 months and they haven't engaged with you, they haven't opened things, they haven't clicked on things, you are better off to take those people out of your communications. What I would do is take them out and put them into their own lapsed recapture series. But if you keep adding those folks into your regular appeals and renewals, inevitably you are just diminishing your deliverability rate. So that's why you really want to look at that. The other thing that's kind of a clue to look at is what are they doing with you where the interaction is kind of habitual. So one way to think about that is what we've seen with testing is anybody who is engaged in the first 30 days after their initial contact with you is highly predictive of who's going to be with you in the long run. So in other words, you want to give more attention to those people that are engaged early than folks that, you know, they take 3 months and they open an email and then 2 more months pass. People who are interested in you are going to be engaged early. Same thing, inactivity in the beginning just leads to inactivity later, which is why for a lot of the lapsed recapture programs, we have a few clients that are starting those at 60 days or at 90 days, and I would really encourage you to test that. I think for most people, they let the inactivity go on too long. Another way to think about that is the quicker you get them back re-engaged, the more likely they are to be re-engaged than if you let that go. One of our people on staff always say the clock is ticking. So start thinking about how you can better segment these people and put them into some of these automated communication programs early on, because it seems to make a difference on down the road. the next thing is, could a robot really help me? So the main thing, and I think the answer is almost always yes, but here is kind of a checklist to see what really works. You've got to have a trigger to get in, and usually that trigger needs to be something more than it's September, so we need to ask for money. Something that the donor or potential donor, some action that they're taking could be your trigger in, and sometimes it is going to be time, as you see with the renewals. The other thing, and this is probably obvious, but some people miss this, you have to have that piece of data that is the trigger in your CRM. So you've got to be a CRM that's flexible enough that you can collect whatever data points you might want to use. This can sometimes be great when you have custom fields. Again, Union of Concerned Scientists does this great with using their survey questions. The next thing is, when are you going to kind of talk the same thing each time? So this is why renewals works really well, because you kind of have that series of, the different ways you're going to ask people to renew. If you are, I would say in most cases, if you are doing a Kavanaugh campaign right now, this is not a good thing for automation, because it seems to change about every hour, and that means you're going to have to change. So something like that wouldn't work, but whereas lapsed, recapture, and renewals are usually great. The other thing, and I think this is a big thing to think about, just because your campaign is automated, you don't want to be tone deaf. You don't want it to sound like a robot is asking for money. You want to think of the way that you do your copy, that, even 6 months from now, what you're saying in renewals is just as timely as when you said it today. So really think about the way you talk about time in these things. Sometimes recently is not your best word to use. Usually you don't want something as distinctive as last week. So think about that a little bit. And then just really quickly here, and then we'll jump to questions. So I think Audubon did a great job in kind of starting their automation. And their issue, which I think is really probably what a lot of you have, is yes, I'd love to do this, but I don't have enough time to do my basic stuff already. How can I do anything more? And so what they said is, we're not going to forego the good for the perfect. We're going to start where we're at. So rather than, we don't have a time to do a lot of testing to figure out the perfect number of days between each email. So we're going to start where we are. We usually send things about a week apart, so we're just going to start there. Secondly, the length. Again, we don't have the staff right now to test should our renewals be, 4 messages or 6 messages, or necessarily is this the best order or not. So we're going to take what we have and we're going to automate that first. And then later on we'll go into testing. And then thirdly, they talked about their content. And they did go back through and say, what of our emails that we sent out last year, what were most popular, and how can we retool those for a welcome series? And so that was really, and this is kind of the chart of all the different emails that they were sending out and how they were using them, and what were the different programs and what they were coming in. So anything that across programs, and as you can imagine, they are bird people, so there are certain birds that seem to be popular with everybody. So they would pick some of those and use those across programs. Then they jumped in with, some notices they felt like they needed to be really specific. The people that came on a climate change message really needed something a little bit different from the people who came in through bird pics. So they, changed that up where they needed to, and just created a couple of variations on their series. And then I think what was really smart about them, they had a couple of big meetings and everybody talked it through, and then they said, well, that's all great, but what's possible? Let's start with what's possible. And immediately, even without all the testing, they started bringing in more money. And it was, after the fact that they went back and tested. But don't let the idea that, oh, there's so much to do here, keep you from getting started. And here's what they found also in terms of timing, which I just wanted to share with you. They found that people who had been inactive for 12 months were really, really difficult to bring back. And so they started testing with recapture and other things earlier. They found for their folks at 6 months of inactivity, they were fading pretty good. They could get some of those people back, but it was hard, and they have ended up even doing less than 6 months to start a recapture program. The other thing they found, and again, this is do what's possible, resend your best. Some of the pieces that they sent out were hugely popular, and they basically resent them out again a year later, almost the same thing, and they were still popular. What people like, they like. And just because you might be bored with something, oftentimes your donors aren't. So think about that. They do update it periodically. These are not set it and forget it, but it's a little bit that balance between resend your best, but give it a little bit of periodic. And then one of the things they do is they always end a series with some level of transparency, which is, you know, you're now through your renewal series, you know, we're not going to email you at this frequency anymore, or something to that effect, which for them has been effective. Okay, and with that, I think we'll just jump into questions. I think we've got about 10 minutes. Okay, first question. Can you talk about sustainer acquisition and how to use automation to convert more one-time donors to sustainers? Yes, this can be a really effective way to do it. And the thing is to figure out with a little bit of analysis what your biggest triggers are. One of the things that we really see with sustainers is time. Don't let 3 months or 6 months or more go by before you ask them to become sustainers. Usually when people test into it, the sooner after a gift that they've given, ask them to become a sustainer. Another thing that people have used for triggers, anytime somebody upgrades, you know, if somebody's been your donor for a couple of years and they've pretty consistently given you $50 every time they give, and all of a sudden now they've given you $75, that seems to be a good point to ask them to become a sustainer as well. And again, you can automate this with a query. Give me everybody whose recent gift is higher than their last gift, for instance, in terms of doing that. The other thing is, which I think is the one that everybody gets, anybody who says yes all the time, meaning that, you know, within a year they have given you 2 or 3 or more gifts, those are prime for sustainers. Again, it's just setting up those queries. That would be your trigger to get into that. And basically the day that you hit that, the day that that upgrade is, you can set that up and set your timing. But, you know, basically 3 days after I get an upgrade gift, I want to send them a sustainer invite. Next question. How long should you wait to add new supporters to your full email list from a welcome series? So a lot of folks, I think what is most common that people do is they get people completely through the welcome series before they put them into their email list. So for some people that's 2 or 3 weeks, some people that's 6 or 7 weeks. Some people also, and again, you got to test this, but some people, depending on what your mission is, they will actually pause a welcome series. And again, you can go in and do that really easy in EA, but you can pause your welcome series and bring people into an appeal, for example, if you think that's going to be more effective. So a couple ways I see this happen. Anytime there's a natural disaster, you know, if you're seeing Hurricane Florence on CNN all day, probably a Hurricane Florence appeal might be more impactful than, you know, welcome series email number 4. And so maybe you pause that, you get them through Florence appeals, and then maybe you come back and put them in the welcome series. The other way that I've seen done that is probably the one other exception to that is time of year. For some people, actually getting them into their year-end campaign, especially that last week of December, results in more money than keeping them in the welcome series. Next one, is renewal series applicable if we don't have a traditional membership program? Yes, I think it totally is. Your wording is a little bit different, but you know, I think with most people, their goal is to get at least 1 gift from every donor each year. And typically, for most folks, the biggest line item for them is renewals. And most people do want to recommit themselves more than they want to start something new. So like I said, your wording is a little bit different if you aren't a traditional membership organization, but it tends to be really effective. And I think this is our last question. Do you find using telemarketing in conjunction to email series leads to greater success, or does it put off potential donors? So again, test into this, but what most people have found is telemarketing, when it's done right, is a huge boost to their revenue, and particularly for retention. The two places that I know people use telemarketing in conjunction with email series a lot is sustainer upgrades, and that seems to be a great way to go from email series to a telemarketer. And the other one is newly lapsed folks. Usually those calls are break even or do better. They keep people in your series. I think part of the reason telemarketing is working better than ever is I think the telemarketers test more. But the other thing is an awful lot of people have put themselves on the do not call list because they don't like to be telemarketed. And believe it or not, because I'm sure it's no one on this webinar, but there are people out there who like to talk on the phone and actually welcome those calls. And if you're working with a good telemarketing firm, that will be a pleasurable experience for people who still have themselves on that list. So, and I think that wraps us up today. Thank you so much for the good questions. If you have other questions or other follow-up, please feel free to email us and we'll just respond directly to you. At the end, we always do a couple of shameless plugs. So the two that I have today, we have a new piece out called 25 of the Best Nonprofit Campaigns. First of all, maybe your organization is listed amongst the 25, and if not, you probably can get some good tips and tricks from that. And then the other thing, of course, always, if you feel like your tools are not working for you, but you're working for them, let us show you every action. We can help you. I think we can do a lot of things to help you raise more money, and maybe just as importantly or more is save a bunch of time. And you can see how you can contact us right there on the screen. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. I hope this was helpful. If you have thoughts on things that either you have automated or should be automated, please feel free to email us. I always like to hear what folks are doing. Thank you.